I never believed in heroes, until the night a stranger with a little girl in his arms saved me from a man who was ready to end my life. That's how it all began. Now let's go back to the cold, rainy evening in Chicago when fate decided to write a story that none of them saw coming. Jason Miller was no stranger to hardship. At 34, he'd already faced more storms than most do in a lifetime. A former construction worker turned part-time mechanic, Jason had been raising his 5-year-old daughter Emily alone ever since his wife died of leukemia 3 years ago. The pain hadn't faded, not really. But he had built a routine, one that kept him busy enough to keep the grief at bay. Jason didn't have much, but he had enough. A tiny apartment on the east side, a used truck that barely passed inspections, and most importantly, the purest reason to keep living, Emily. She was the only light in his often dark world. That evening, rain lashed against the windshield as he drove Emily home from her speech therapy class. He had just pulled into the gas station when he heard the scream. It was faint at first, barely audible over the sound of thunder. But then he saw her. A woman, soaked, shivering, and terrified, was running barefoot across the gas station parking lot, glancing over her shoulder. Jason followed her gaze. A man, twice her size, was chasing her with purpose. There was violence in his eyes. Jason acted without thinking. He unbuckled Emily and told her softly, "Stay here, baby. Daddy will be right back." Then he ran out, intercepting the attacker with a force that shocked even him. A scuffle followed, fists, kicks, shouts. The man eventually fled into the shadows, disappearing before the police could arrive. The woman collapsed into Jason's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Her name was Natalie Brooks. Natalie had always been strong, independent, and capable. A 29-year-old marketing executive with a promising future in a top firm downtown. But behind her confident smile was a man, her ex-fiancé, who couldn't take no for an answer. He had grown possessive, jealous, and finally violent. She'd taken a restraining order. She had moved to a different neighborhood. But it hadn't been enough. That night, she had stopped at the gas station to fill up her tank, unaware that he had followed her. He tried to force her into his car. She fought back. She ran. That's when she found Jason. In the days that followed, Jason testified to the police. Natalie's ex was arrested on multiple charges. But more than that, something unexpected began to form, an invisible thread between Jason and Natalie. Natalie couldn't stop thinking about the man who saved her. She found herself wanting to see Jason again. She wanted to thank him properly, to know more about the man who didn't think twice about risking his life for a stranger. So she visited him at his auto shop a week later. She brought cookies for Emily and coffee for Jason. What she didn't expect was the overwhelming warmth she felt being around them. Jason, however, was hesitant. He didn't let people in easily. He had scars, not all of them visible. And he didn't want to confuse kindness for something more. But Natalie was patient. She visited more often. She talked to Emily, who adored her instantly. Slowly, Jason began to soften. Over the next few months, Natalie and Jason became close. They would talk for hours after Emily went to bed, about life, loss, parenting, and dreams long forgotten. Jason confessed how he once wanted to start his own garage but never had the money. Natalie encouraged him, even offered to help. Jason refused, too proud, too afraid. But Natalie understood. She knew healing took time. One evening, Natalie joined Jason and Emily at the park. The sun was setting, casting golden light over the playground. Jason watched Emily laugh as she played with Natalie, his heart caught in his throat. He hadn't felt this kind of peace in years. Natalie turned to him and whispered, "You saved my life, Jason. Maybe I can help save yours too." But not everything was perfect. Jason's past came knocking when his in-laws filed for custody of Emily. They believed he wasn't stable enough to raise her. They cited his income, his neighborhood, and his questionable associations, hinting at his growing closeness with Natalie as a red flag. Jason was devastated. He didn't have the money for a lawyer. He thought of giving up, of letting them take Emily, just so she could have a better life. But Natalie didn't let that happen. She hired a lawyer. She stood by him in court. She brought character witnesses, documented his every sacrifice, every effort, every loving act as a father. And in the final hearing, when the judge ruled in Jason's favor, he broke down in tears. "Why would you do all this for me?" he asked her later. Natalie smiled softly and said, "Because you never let me fall when I needed someone. Now it's my turn." 6 months after that fateful night, Natalie invited Jason and Emily to a dinner at her place. The table was set with candles. Soft music played in the background. Emily, dressed in a blue dress, handed Jason a little velvet box. Jason opened it, confused. Inside was a ring. Then Natalie knelt down. "Jason Miller, you saved my life. You gave me a reason to hope again. You reminded me what real love looks like, not just in how you treat me, but in how you raised your daughter with dignity, grace, and so much heart. I don't want to imagine a future without you." Jason was stunned. No woman had ever seen him the way Natalie did. No one had ever chosen him, truly chosen him. Tears filled his eyes as he whispered, "Yes." Today, Jason runs his own garage with Natalie's help. Emily is thriving in school. And every evening, they sit down as a family. One born not of perfect circumstances, but of second chances. And for Natalie, she finally believed in heroes. Because sometimes, they're not the ones in capes. Sometimes, they're single dads with oil-stained hands and hearts big enough to save you. Moral of the story: love doesn't always come dressed in fairy tales. Sometimes, it shows up in the form of a single parent fighting to survive, or a woman trying to escape her past. True love is built on sacrifice, courage, and healing. And when two broken souls come together to lift each other, miracles happen.